Today, on Energy Contact, everyone seeks comfort, but you know what? You seek discomfort too. Maybe you seek it out by exercising, stretching, walking, working out. It's good for you, and it feels good too. If you belong to a gym, you pay money to get discomfort. So, comfort is good, discomfort is good. You know what's bad? Being numb. So put down your painkillers for a few minutes. You want to be awake, alert, and aware, because you're going to feel very good about what's coming up right now on Energy Contact.
I'm gonna drive away all these doubts I've been keeping and doubt. Keep my mind on better things. He ain't gonna worry and I ain't gonna complain. I'm gonna drive away all these doubts I've been keeping and doubt. Keep my mind on better things. Just keep my mind on better things.
Hello, and welcome to Energy Contact. My name is Joseph Willenbrink. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to the production staff here in the studio for helping me get my message out to you. Energy Contact is a series that I'm presenting to you as a public service. It's about attaining perfect health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and realizing your full potential. It's designed to present you a new way of seeing yourself and a new way of seeing the world around you. We're talking about things that have to do with making an energetic contact with yourself internally and with your environment. There's no difference between the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotion, the intellect, the ego, you name it. There's no difference between mass and energy. There is something about us that loves to categorize and classify and catalog, put these things all in their neat little separate compartments. But all that health and growth and self-improvement we're talking about actually take place when we do just the opposite. When we put these things together, when we make an energetic contact between the physical world and the unseen one. We're presenting on these programs a brand new paradigm that's thousands of years old. We're presenting extraordinary topics for ordinary people. And let's move forward with that. Let's bring up our first slide. Everyone please understand that I am not a doctor. I don't want to be a doctor. This show is not a medical advice show. It's not a medical talk show. It is not a medical anything show. Couldn't be further from it. Now, I might call myself an energy healer or a chakra healer. So might you if you came to me. Lots of people call me lots of things. But state, federal, and local governments call me no such thing at all. And it's important to know that. There's a lot of important information on your screen right now. Please read it with your full attention, if you will. When you've got it down, now would be a great time to locate a pencil and paper. And here's why you want to do that. At the end of this program, we are going to run some credits, and on those credits, there's going to be contact information for me. Now, I invite and encourage you to contact me. In fact, I sort of hope something I'll have to say to you today might inspire you to want to contact me. But in order to do that, you're going to need my contact information. And in order to get that, you're going to need a pencil and paper. There'll be plenty of time to jot that stuff down when the credits roll, if you have a pencil and paper already handy, so please locate that now. All right, let's come back up here. Today's show is show number 60. And if you're tuning in for the first time today, well, thanks and welcome. These shows are sequential. They build. So we're talking about things today that we've introduced and explained on previous shows. There's some ramp-up things, some up-to-speed stuff that you will have missed out on. I'm doing my very best, though, to make each show have a lot of value on a standalone basis, and I believe today's show does. So stick around and enjoy it, and if what you see piques your interest, then I will invite and encourage you to look around, because there will be earlier shows, previous shows, airing at later times. They'll either be re-airing right here on this channel, or they'll be on at different days and times in different areas. And if you look for them, I'll appreciate it. All right, and now it's the time of the show where I get to introduce my co-host to you. Let's get Slim on camera. This is my buddy Slim here. And Slim is here for a reason. Since we're investigating what it is that energy contacts in the physical self, we have to know a couple of things, don't we? we have to know something about energy, and this show is certainly a show about energy. But all of that energy out there somewhere does us no good. It does us no good at all until it comes into contact with something. My buddy Slim here is here to help us understand what that thing is that the energy contacts. Remember, a body without energy is a corpse. And energy without a body, well, it might be a number of cool things, but none of them are human. All right, previously on Energy Contact, we have been looking at the mystical flow of invisible energy through our physical selves. We've been looking at things like chi and prana. We've been looking at things like the mind and emotion and spirit. These are all things that we can't see, yet we know they're there. They are what our body needs to have in order to be something other than that corpse we just discussed. When we were kids, we were taught that our bodies were just these individual hunks of mass, that we were separate from one another, that's for sure. But the story gets worse, that even within ourselves, we were a body separate from our own mind, separate from our spirit, separate from our emotions. Irreconcilable, never to meet, never to make up. It's a terrible lie that we were taught that. But on Energy Contact, you've come to understand yourself in a new and in a far more accurate way. You've come to see yourself the way Einstein saw you, as frequencies and vibrations and rhythms and pulses, as energy flows and energetic forces, things that are invisible but that manifest into our body in very physical ways. In fact, it is difficult, if not impossible, to be a spiritual person until and unless we promote the flow of invisible energy through our physical structure. We've seen that mastering these flows has something to do with the things to which we are attracted and the things from which we're repulsed. Those old yogis, the old mystics, called them ragadveshas. If we flow, things go great, and if we resist flow, we experience pain. Pain, which we have seen, is only resistance to flow. And so all things that flow along paths. And we've seen some of them. We've looked at acupuncture meridians and reflexology points and all of these things that have to do with energy starting at one place and going to some other place. We saw vertical channels. We saw our spine. We saw the caduceus, that medical symbol, a distillation column, and something called the Sushumna Nadi, all sort of doing the same thing. And we saw horizontal things as well. The base, the core, our pelvis, the source of energy flow, and the energy that flows up from it. Last couple of shows, we studied some Tantra, and we met a person named Shakti. Shakti, we saw, as the legend goes, she's stuck in this cage that is our pelvis, and she desperately wants to get out and rise up that vertical column. What else have we seen on Energy Contact? Well, we've seen that invisible body intellect, how the same materials in our brains, we always thought that they were brain things, the things that give us thought, reason, recall, memory, logic, all of those things, how they are in fact in every cell of our body. They permeate every cell of our body. So we build everything into that body intellect, everything. And then that body intellect turns around and churns and evaporates and distills and refluxes and condenses it into us. And all of this has led us to our current search to understand this invisible force, this mystical energy that those old Indian mystics called Kundalini energy. And our search to find out what Shakti has to do with all that. All right, so we got all this latent energy caught in our core, stuck in us, and we want to get it out of there. But we still need to figure out the how and the why of it. So we got gravity falling down, we got entropy falling apart, energy falling up, we got things evaporating and refluxing and condensing all over the place. With all these motions and all of this commotion going on, sometimes things happen in ways that make it difficult for us to see and understand the connections between it all. A few shows back, I told you that I was just going to throw a bunch of information at you and that we'd come back and clean it all up later. Well, that's what we're doing today then. We're putting some of this stuff together. We're going to see what the mind has to do with our new friend Shakti. And we're going to see what the mind has to do with all that stuff in the core and all that stuff moving up and down the columns. with the raga deveshas, those attractions and repulsions we looked at, with pleasure and pain, with the movement of Kundalini energy up the Sushumna Nadi. And rest assured, we'll review all those terms. And we'll see what all of this has to do with our health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and realizing our full potential. We want to understand the core itself, from where these energies start their voyage, and the way these energies flow up through us, and how they change on their journey, and how they change us on their journey. All right, so plenty to do. But now we've reached the point where we get to take a little break, because we've got to the point of the show where we get to take our virtual field trip, our journey in our mind's eye that we take about this point of every show. So take a deep breath, close your eyes if you're in a place you can do that. Because today we're going to visualize that you're playing a video game. And it's the first time you've ever played this video game. But you're discovering that you're pretty good at it. You're a natural, and you're doing things, you're like overcoming obstacles and getting by challenges, untying knots, unclogging pipes, undoing crypts, finding hidden things, repelling bad guys, all the things that you do in video games. You're just rocking. And finally, after a while, you make it to the end of the path, and you turn around and you look at me, your eyes are great big, and you say, "Look, I just won." But not so fast, Power Ranger. You turn around and look at the screen again, and you notice that it's starting over. And everything looks about the same, but you soon realize that you've moved up a level. You're up to a higher notch, and everything now is harder. And everything that was working before isn't working anymore. And all the stuff that was the right thing to do last level is the wrong thing to do now. But, as mentioned, you're very good at this. And so soon, you figure it all out, and you make it through this level too. And, you guessed it, you move up to a next level. About this time, you're thinking about how a moment ago you believed you were finished. You believed you had the game won. And now you're realizing that you're just getting started. And it occurs to you that by the time you figure out the whole game, you're going to have to do a lot of losing and starting all over. But you know what? It's okay. That's the game. If it wasn't for the challenge, you wouldn't have wanted the game in the first place. We wouldn't have bought it. When it's aggravating you, it's performing exactly as planned. And so now you say to me, do you think this game goes on forever? Do you think it'll ever be complete? All right, hold that thought. We've been working our way into talking about chakras and auras on energy contact, but we really haven't gotten there yet because we have been stuck in our core. What we have been talking about is Kundalini energy and this something that we've called the Sushumna Nadi. Let's bring up a slide and take a look at that. We've seen that the Sushumna Nadi is an energetic pipeline through us. You see that thing on the right side of your screen? That's the Sushumna Nadi. Really, it's just that skinny vertical pole in the middle. And it occupies roughly an equivalent space in us as our spine. And I'm showing it here next to that medical symbol. That's called a caduceus. I'm showing it next to it on purpose because that's a very good way to envision it. In fact, that's where that caduceus came from. It's a homologue to the Sushumna and the spine. Those snakes there, by the way, represent a couple of other nadis. We won't have time to look at them today. And those dots on the caduceus, or those circles on the Sushumna, those represent things called chakras. Now, nadis are just energy pipelines. We don't have time to review them much today. But if you've ever gone to a yoga class where they've talked about moving energy up your spine, what they're really talking about is moving it up the Sushumna Nadi. And the name of that energy that we move is called Kundalini, or Kundalini Shakti. But most people are not moving any energy at all up their Sushumnas for a number of reasons, but here's two big ones. First off, these things called chakras, those circles, they crimp off the energy flow. And secondly, and even more fundamentally, the energy is stuck at the source. It's not even making it up to the second circle. All right, let's come back up here. We're seeing that there's something about health and growth that takes place when we get past or transcend those two obstacles. Which brings us to Shakti and Shiva. Let's quickly review their story. Once upon a time, there was this woman named Shakti, and she had this boyfriend named Shiva, and she desperately wanted to see him, to be reunited with him. But she was very far away from him. Now, we can't get into the why and the how they were separated the first place today on Energy Contact, but what we want to know is that they really belong together, and Shiva isn't moving. And so Shakti realizes that if she's going to be reunited, it's up to her. So in order to do that, she has to go on a journey. And in order to complete the journey, she has to figure out how to get past obstacles. So you see that Shakti's trip here, it's our video game. In order to arrive at her destination, she needs to go through a series of perils and trials, and her reward for doing well at one level is moving up to a harder level. Okay, it's probably obvious to you by now that Shakti's journey is a metaphor for what's going on inside us, inside you and me, inside your body, mind, emotion, spirit, intellect, ego. It's a parable. As a matter of fact, it is the foundational story upon which Tantra Yoga is based. And the pipeline upon which Shakti must travel, upon which your energy must travel, is that Sushumna Nadi. Now please remember that the word yoga means union, and the word Tantra means to weave, to expand, to spread. So Tantra Yoga then means to weave and expand together, like those snakes were just doing up that caduceus, like weaving a fabric, like weaving Shakti and Shiva back together again. Now all of us, in a metaphoric, but in a very real way, we want to get the Shakti in us to wake up and to get out of that prison that is the pelvis. Rise up that Sushumna Nadi and be reunited with Shiva, who's waiting up here somewhere. So what Shakti is telling us is that energy travels through us. It rises like steam, and it refines itself on the way up, which brings us back to the topic of distillation. Let's review that real quickly. Let's bring up another slide. Here is the diagram and the picture, same thing side by side, of a distillation apparatus, or to use the common term, a still. We've looked a lot at distillation over the past few shows because it's very similar to what's going on in our bodies. It's a metaphor, a homologue for Shakti's journey. Let's move right to our next slide. And here you'll be able to see how the distillation units even sort of physically resemble our spine and our pelvis, and how they all resemble the Sushumna Nadi. But it's at the core where our video game begins. On Energy Contact, we refer to our pelvis as a bowl of guts and goo, and we've seen that it is the core of us in so many ways. Not only that, but it's Shakti's cage. All right, so let's come back up here and get out my model of my pelvis here. Here is a model of a spine and pelvis. It's just a little section from Slim. I hope you guys can see that. But it's also a model of a distillation apparatus. And it's also a model of the Sushumna Nadi. I'll use this model to let you know how distillation works. So we start out with a bunch of raw material down here in the bowl. And it's just crude ore, but there's good stuff in it too. And when we heat it, it turns to steam and it starts rising up this fractionating column here and condensing down and rising up and condensing down. And through a series of that, what happens is it starts to purify. Now remember, the stuff down here and the steam up here, they're the same thing in different form. And it refines as it moves up. So what does that have to do with Shakti? Well, this is analogous to the Sushumna Nadi. You can also see this spine and pelvis here as the Sushumna Nadi, the path that Shakti has to travel on to reach Shiva. But before we can do that, we have to break Shakti out of her cage down here. All right, we'll put down my spine for a second. If we can do that, we'll start to see new things in new ways, and we'll evolve. We'll achieve peace and comfort, a new balance, a new equilibrium. And so that's it. It's the game over. Just break Shakti out and watch her move up. But wait, it's not that easy. That cage is stronger than it looks, and there's other things in the way. But we can't break Shakti out until we understand what it is that holds her captive. What is that thing that's got her lodged in so tightly? Well, you sitting down? Here's the answer. It's the mind. It's your mind. The mind is what is the source of all pleasure and pain, of all the attractions and repulsions, those ragged devasas. The mind is what we use to shape our entire universe. But the plot thickens again, because now, before we can move forward with that information, we have to figure out what the mind is, what it consists of. Everybody talks about the mind, but not many people seem to know what it is. How would you define your mind? While you're thinking about that, we have to remember the object of the game: health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and the realization of your full potential. We're sort of led to believe that the mind is the brain, or at least that it's something that's part of the brain, or it sits in the brain, or something like that. But that is very, very far from the case. Let's look into it. Our mind and our brain do not coincide. It's our mind and our body intellect that do. Not only that, but our body and every cell in it, really it is our mind. It is the body intellect. That's what the body intellect is. This body intellect we've been talking about forever on Energy Contact. Which means that our subconscious mind, well, it must be just a bunch of chemicals swimming around in the central nervous system. We've seen previously that our mind and our feelings are molecules. They're proteins and neuropeptides. We did shows about ligands and receptors and things like that. So maybe invisible emotions do have a physical presence after all. They are the internal forces that animate us. Regardless of what else they are the internal forces that that animate us, and that, for our longtime viewers, has great meaning. We begin every show talking about the body intellect, and now we're starting to become aware of a new understanding of it. All right, so let's reset. Today we're looking at what the mind has to do with the movement of Kundalini energy up the Sushumna Nadi. And now, in doing that, all of a sudden we find ourselves looking at molecular biology. We've seen that all of our cells are these independent, intelligent entities. Every one of them. And we've got trillions and trillions of them. But they're all working together. They're consulting with each other. They're coordinated. They're networked. All of the things that make us think the way we think, look the way we look, act the way we act, and feel the way we feel. They are just a part and a culmination of all the experiences floating around every cell of our body. And experiences are invisible too. Or wait a minute, maybe not. All right, so here again we've come to a place where energy contacts science. Around here, energy contacts a lot of things. So we've got the science of mind and spirit, but words like mind and spirit scare scientists to death, don't they? They don't use words like that. And yet we know these things exist. They may be invisible, but they are precisely the something that makes us alive, that makes us something other than a corpse. It's invisible things. They're precisely what animates us. But still, they must be made out of something. All right, we've got a few things floating around here loose. What's all this have to do with Shakti, with our video game? Well, in order to move to the next level, we have to overcome all sorts of blocks and crimps and obstacles and stuff. Geographically speaking, where's my spine here? Geographically speaking, all we have to do on our video game is get Shakti from here to up here. Actually, a point sort of on the top of our head up here. Seems simple enough, huh? It's not very much distance, but it is an incredibly long journey, deceptively long. You think you're all done, and then all of a sudden, boom, the stakes go up. It's more, it's harder. As long as Shakti is stuck down there at the root, at the bottom of that distillation bowl, she is trapped by a false perception of separation. In this place, it seems as though there's a difference between the body and the mind and the spirit, the emotion. Shakti knows better, but the perception's so real, it seems so real that her senses, even with that knowledge, her senses deceive her. Just like your senses deceive you. What is this thing that deceives us, that causes our senses to deceive us? Well, it's the mind. The mind is the healer and the slayer. It is the conqueror and the thing that must be conquered. It is everything. And among its favorite tools are the Ragadveshas. Remember them? The attractions and repulsions that we talked about. Here's how they go. It's only the attraction to wealth that makes you susceptible to the pain of poverty. It's your attachment to a full stomach that sets you up for the pain of hunger. It's the need for companionship or romance or acceptance that makes you feel the pain and the agony of loneliness and separation and isolation. It's your attachment to happiness that makes you sad. In fact, it's the pursuit of happiness that makes you sad. Every good thing flows through the same pipe as a bad thing. And so when you attach to the pipeline, you get whatever the pipeline processes. So when a person says, "You're making me mad, you're making me sad," well, they're lying. They're just wrong. If they're not lying, they don't understand what the old mystics know about the Ragadveshas. In our video game, every time we seek an attraction, we get a repulsion too. So if we're smart, we stop doing that. We stop seeking attractions and we stop looking for the elves that grant us the wishes and things like that. It pulls us away from the object of the game. So what takes us towards the object of the game? Well, for Shakti to move, she needs to be at peace. She needs to find that peace. Now, it's possible to push beyond the point of comfort. It's a fine line we want to understand. We get uncomfortable a lot in our video game, but we can still be at a peaceful place. We don't want to confuse discomfort with pain. They're two completely different things. Because if we spend our lives in pain, we pursue nothing more than making our pain go away. And when we live at that level, our mind distorts. And that distorts our body. And that distorts everything else. And yet so many people choose to live their life in a state of pain. They might not think that they've chosen it, but somewhere that's what they've done. All right, and so now all of a sudden, to understand our game, we've gone from Shakti to the mind to pleasure and pain. Let's take a second just to see how they relate. When our mind separates from our stomach hurts. From our emotions, we get angry or crazy or whatever. When our mind separates from our spirit, we lose our way. What keeps us attached to our mind is peace. How do we attain peace? We'll have to find that out next time. For now, we're out of time. Thanks for joining me. I wish you peace and positive energy and a healthy life in Energy Contact.